In this video, we're going to go over how to initiate and run an instance on your computer. So start by going to aws.emory.edu, and in the top right corner, you're going to click AWS Console. Sign in using your NetID. On mine, I already have it saved, but it'll prompt you to sign in with your NetID. And then you'll see this is the AWS main management console. So in the top right, you'll see your username and then where your remote computer is located. So I'm set in Northern Virginia, and then a support tab. And today we're going to be looking at EC2 instances. So we're going to go to Services, and then under Compute, EC2. And just a little bit about what an instance actually is. So Amazon Web Services is basically a program that allows us to use cloud computing, so using a remote computer for big data or just really any analyses that you need to run. So it's similar in that way to the Human Genetics Computing Cluster, HGCC, where you don't have to use your local computer to run a lot of these analyses. And it's really helpful when you have big data or you're downloading big data sets, as I'm doing right now. So instances are basically just a way to basically rent these remote computers from Amazon for a certain amount of time. You can add as much storage and capacity in the processor as you want, and it's very customizable. And so you're basically renting these remote computers for a set amount of time, and you can add anything you want to them. So to launch our instance, we're just going to click Launch Instance right here on the EC2 dashboard. And you'll see there's 7 steps to launching your instance. And it might look daunting at first, but it actually gets pretty easy once you go through it a couple times. So the first step is to choose an Amazon machine image or an AMI. So as you can see in this description right here, it's basically, an AMI is basically a software configuration. So it's like the operating system and everything necessary to really get a computer going. So you'll see that Amazon has these basic AMIs listed right here. Whenever I'm doing like file downloads or not like super specific analyses, I'll usually just stick with this and then add whatever packages I need if I end up needing them later. But you can also see there's this tab called My AMIs. And I have an AMI called RNA Sequencing Analysis Pipeline. So this AMI contains packages like SRA Toolkit, Star Align, Cufflinks. And so this allows me to not have to download these packages every time I do an analysis. So it's similar to modules in HGCC. And so using your AMI, like this RNA sequencing one that I made, you set it up the same way as the basic AMIs. It's just a matter of what packages are inherent to your instance. So on these, it's just going to be basic computing packages. But in my AMIs, like you can see, I already pre-downloaded the packages I need for RNA sequencing. So you can also go to Shared With Me, and this is a super helpful tool. You can see that once I click Shared With Me on the left, the Emory HPC AMI comes up. So this HPC has RStudio on it, and I got it from a collaborator. So this was super helpful because I didn't have to download RStudio onto an AMI myself. I just said, hey, like, could you by any chance share this AMI with me? It'd be super helpful. And so he gladly did. And so this is a really great tool. So for this tutorial, we're just going to do a basic free tier AMI, this Amazon Linux 2. So just click Select. And you'll be taken to step 2, choosing an instance type. So this step is basically choosing how much processing power you need. So I tend to base it off of vCPUs and memory. So the memory tab and vCPUs, you can get extremely high. So you can have a ton of processing power. I typically don't need that. In the Sloan Lab, I do a lot of RNA sequencing mapping or downloading big data. So if I'm doing mapping with FASTQ files, I tend to want more processing power, and I may not need as much memory. But if I'm downloading files from a collaborator, from a remote server, as I'm doing right now, I don't really need processing power, but I do need a lot of memory to keep those files in the instance so that I don't have to do them individually and they can just stay in the instance until I'm ready for them. So for something like downloading like I'm doing right now, I may choose a lesser memory for processing, so something like 32 or like 128 or something. So you can really play around with it. It's very customizable, and it's really just dependent upon what you're doing. For the purposes of this tutorial, we're just going to stick with the free tier one, just 1 vCPU and 1 gig of memory, because we're not going to be doing anything with it. So next we can configure the details of it. So this is kind of getting into the nitty gritty of your instance. So for choosing a subnet, this is basically the IP address that your instance is going to be accessible from. So by default, it goes to an IT only subnet, which we are not IT, so we don't have access to that. So we generally choose a private subnet 1 or private subnet 2. It does not matter which one you choose. They're both private subnets. They just have different names. So I'm just going to go with private subnet 1. There's also a public subnet 1 and 2. I only use the public subnet if I'm accessing RStudio, because accessing RStudio from AWS, it's a internet interface, so you have to have access outside of your local computer's SSH port. So I'm going to click private subnet 1 for this because we're not going to be using RStudio. And I'm also going to add an IAM role. So I'm going to make another video about making an IAM role and kind of the details of what it is. But a brief overview, you can see that I titled this one EC2 to S3 full. So basically what this does is it allows you to take your files that you have stored in Amazon's storage service S3 and move those files into your instance in EC2. So if I have FASTQ files that I'm working with and they're stored in S3 and I want to be able to do analysis on them, that would be moving those files from S3 to EC2 each time so that they're in the instance for only that amount of time, and then we can just move those files back to S3. So like I said, there'll be another video coming on how to exactly do that and how to make this role, but for now, just stick with EC2 to S3 IAM role. So next we add the storage. So this is kind of what I was talking about earlier. So on the instance that I'm running with downloading this big data, I have like 1.8 terabytes of data, or 1.8 terabytes on the instance for my data. And so you can really customize this. I think this type of instance could go up to like 1 terabyte. For this, we're just going to do the default 8, but in this box right here, you can really customize it to how much storage you actually need. So this next step is adding tags. Most of the time I don't add tags. It's mostly an organization thing. So if you have a lot of instances running or you want to be able to access that instance later and know like what you're actually doing on it, tags are a really useful tool. Lately, I haven't been having a lot of instances running at the same time, or I've been doing different things on different instances, so I haven't really needed it, but it's a really useful organization tool. So this is the final step. So we're going to configure a security group. So AWS is really big on having secure instances since you're on a remote host. So in order to do that, we have these security groups that allow us to access certain ports. So you're going to create a new security group since you only have the AWS default ones. And in these boxes right here, you can pause the video and type in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines right here into the boxes. You can fill them in. There's the protocol, port range, source. And so you can go ahead and pause the video. And then once you fill those in, you can title it. I titled it Emory CIDR blocks. I got this from the Emory AWS people. And so this is just gonna allow you basic security from Emory. So I'm gonna go ahead and select that security block. And now we're on the review page because all of our instances set up. So you just make sure everything's okay, and then click launch in the bottom right. So this is creating a key pair. So a key pair, just like the security groups, it's just added security for your instance. So a key pair is something that you save on your computer where you can only access the instance if you have access to the key pair. So you can see I have a key pair and other people in my lab have key pairs. And it's really easy to create a new one. So just go to create new, give it a name that you'll remember, and then download key pair. And you want to save that in a place that you will remember where it is and have easy access to it. I keep mine in my bin folder just because it's really easy for me to change directory or cite where that PIM file is. So you're going to access that every time you use an instance. So make sure to keep that handy. So I chose choose existing, but go ahead and create new if you don't have one. You acknowledge that you have access to it and then click launch instance. So woohoo, we launched our instance. So in the bottom right, you can click View Instances. And you can see I've been working a little bit, so I have a lot running. But the instance that we just created is pending. So once that gets to running, we can go ahead and run it. But in the meantime, we can go ahead and start with this instance that I already have running. So you can click on the instance once it changes to running like this one has, and then go to connect. So you can see here, if you haven't used your PIM file before, if you just created a new one, make sure to change the mode of the PIM file so that it's publicly viewable so that you can SSH into it, into your instance. Once you do that the first time, you do not have to do that again though. And so once you have your PIM file configured, you can just literally copy and paste this example right here. And so once you copy and paste the example, we can go to your terminal, and I'm just going to CD into the file where my PIM file is, or the folder where my PIM file is. And then, like I said, copy and paste that exact example. And you should get a prompt. I've already logged into this instance, so it didn't pop up, but you should get a prompt where it's like, do you want to accept the environment? Just type yes. It's just saying it's a new IP address, so your computer wants to make sure you're aware of what you're doing. And then you should get a little box like this that says where your instance is, Amazon Linux 2 AMI. And then you're in your instance, woo! And so you can do, it's just like your terminal on your computer now. You can do basic commands like ls. And then once I actually have files in it, you can even do commands with those files too, just like on HTCC or just like on your computer in your terminal. So like I said, there'll be another video coming about moving files back and forth from S3 to EC2. And once you're done with your instance, so assume that we've gone through all of our data, we were done working with it, we can select the instance. So you can see the instance I just created is now running, so we could just do the same thing where you connect and then do that. But once we're done with the instance, you can just select it, go to Actions, Instance State, then Terminate. And then yes, we want to terminate it. And that's it. So you want to make sure to terminate it when you're done so that you're not charged for data that you're not using or instances that you're not using. And that's all there is to it. So it's very difficult at first, but once you keep doing it, it'll get easier. So tune into the next video and thank you for watching.